Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 22 of the Cosmic Force. My name is Tyler Reganti, and on tonight's show, we have our full team back to dive into our first trade paperback of the High Republic as we discuss the There Is No Fear arc. We've also got a new trade paperback in the weekly pull list and a special announcement for our upcoming shows. But first, let's go ahead and introduce the rest of the team tonight, and we start where we always do with our newly moved in, fresh back on the show. Emma, how did the move-in go?
Hello. It went very well, I have to say. I really am enjoying my new place. It's right on the ocean and I love it. Like I can hear the ocean right now and it's just the best thing. But it was a little crazy getting my Cosmic Force set up going here. Like, you know, I didn't want to bring too much Star Wars stuff with me because if anybody's ever tried to move with Star Wars collectibles, it's horribly stressful. So yeah, I picked a few Funkos that I already had them in the boxes. I've got the whole Bad Batch crew behind me.
Yeah, that's
here.
a sore subject.
A little bit of a sore subject for everybody else. I paid a little bit of extra money to get it from Big Bad Toy Store, which I love. And so yeah, I've got a few Funkos, got my Last Jedi poster behind me, classic purple lights. Like, yeah, we're all good. So I'm glad to be back, and Heather did a great job last week. It was a great show.
Last week was a lot of fun, but we are very glad to have you back. We go over next to Caleb, who is not sporting a tie, but is sporting an amazing shirt. So where did you get that from?
Roosevelt's, I think it's like the term. It's one of these trendy sort of things where you drop all the vowels. It's a nice shirt. If you're listening at home, it's essentially just a giant mosh posh collage of the old 70s Marvel comic run. It's something else. I've worn this like 3 times since I got it last week. It's amazing. So no, it's a real statement piece, and I don't have many things like this in the wardrobe, but I think I might get a few more. It's really something else.
That is, you all are always the best dressed of the team, and we definitely appreciate that. And last, our producer Jacob. How is the reading going this week? Have we had time to come back to some interesting Star Wars stuff, or are we still neck deep in law?
Yeah, no, that's about it. One of my professors asked this week, because we came off the holiday weekend in the U.S. And he's like, "Do you guys have any reading any real person books?" And everyone just kind of laughed at him. So no, it is what it is. Luckily, I was talking in Slack earlier. I'm like, it's nice that I'm on the comics show, because I can handle my weekly reading in all of about like 10 minutes. So it's a lot easier to keep up with. So, but that's life.
Yeah, I can imagine keeping up with 24-page comics is a little bit easier to keep up with than 350-page novels that come out back to back to back to back. Or I think yesterday we had 4 Legends books come out.
4 Legends books plus Life Day Treasury plus for some people the trade paperback for the High Republic plus Edge of Balance. It was a busy day.
It was a busy day yesterday.
Yeah, a lot of people were like, I don't know how to keep up with all these. Like, there's a lot of photos of people like with their 20-book hauls, it feels like.
Yeah, I don't remember who said this in Slack, but it was a very accurate description, so I'm going to say it. Somebody in Disney Publishing picked September 7th and chose chaos.
Oh, that was me. Yep.
That was you? Yeah, no, it's a very accurate description. I mean, I can't imagine how many Amazon boxes are showing up at my parents' house right now. They must be wondering what's going on.
It is a busy time. But if you are joining us for the first time, welcome. We try to stick to Star Wars comics on this podcast. If you can join some of the other Youtini podcasts if you're interested in those other contents. But we broadcast live right here on youtube.com/Youtini every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. And if you can't join us live, that's okay. Our videos are here on this channel whenever you have the chance to watch them. So go ahead and subscribe to the channel and make sure that you are able to be notified when we have new content come out. We're also on all of your favorite podcast platforms. So if you prefer to listen to us on the go, we are on all of those as well. We are a part of the Youtini podcast network of nearly a dozen shows and a Discord channel at youtini.com/Discord with more than 1,000 members with dozens of channels to choose from. I believe in my weekly check-in here, I believe Tempest Runner was the most popular channel of the week, as that audio drama dropped last week, and there were people talking about their experiences with that. So I highly encourage you to jump on in there and join the discussion. If you like what you see and you want to say thanks, then head over to our Patreon channel at patreon.com/Youtini, where for as little as $5 a month, you can gain exclusive access to the entire Youtini podcast network of shows, as well as exclusive merch and community involvement activities. So, like I said, at the top of the show, we have a roundtable this week. So we are going to go ahead and get right into the main show. We're not going to have any art. We're not going to have any what we're reading this week. So for those of you in the Discord who submitted their art late, don't worry. You actually submitted it a whole week early. For those of you who didn't, make sure you go in there and submit some art for next week. So Jacob, we're going to go ahead and get right into the weekly pull list. So what do we have available at our local comic stores this week?
Right, we got a few important issues this week. We have War of the Bounty Hunter. Yeah, War of the Bounty Hunters number 4, Attack at Dawn, written by Charles Soule, pencils by Luke Ross, the cover by Steve McNiven, colorist Niraj Menon, and letterer Travis Lanham. You also have Dr. Aphra number 14, Repeat Offenders, written by Alyssa Wong, pencils by Federico Sabatini, the cover is by Sarah Pacelli, colorist Rochelle Rosenberg, and letterer Joe Caramanga. And then yesterday, we got Edge of Balance Volume 1. So this is written by Shima Shinya and Justina Ireland, with art by Mizuki Sakakibara. So this is the first of the canon. Well, that's the first original manga in canon, and the first one for the High Republic. You can find all of the links for those down in the description, as always. And if you have any questions about reading order, War of the Bounty Hunters and Dr. Aphra, I don't think it matters. I would probably read War of the Bounty Hunters number 4 first, but it really does not matter whatsoever. But all good issues to pick up.
I haven't read them yet. Are they finally starting to become independent of each other?
Yeah. Well, Dr. Aphra, the past 2 issues has been like off on its own thing. So it's pretty separate now.
Yeah, I read War of the Bounty Hunters first and then Dr. Aphra, but honestly, you could do either one first. Yeah. They are definitely starting to become much more independent of each other than they have been in the past.
That is good to know. And as always, we try to do our best to keep you updated on reading order and which ones are essential. So make sure you come and ask us all of those questions. So, all right, we are going to take a very early merch break here. So we will be back in just a second, and we will get into our roundtable of the week. So we'll be right back. All right, we are back and ready to talk about the High Republic trade paperback number 1. The creative team on this is written by the one, the only Cavan Scott. I think you've heard of him. I think he's done all right for himself. The penciler is Ario Enedito. The inker is Mark Morales. Cover artist is Phil Noto, and the editor is Mark Panicia. These issues were released starting January 6th of 2021, and they ran through May 12th of 2021. And the trade paperback was actually just released yesterday for most of you who got it from either Amazon or digitally. I have a couple of the variant covers behind me. Shout out to our Star Wars comic Discord channel, specifically Mike, who I believe... Jacob, correct me if I'm wrong. I think you said he has every single cover that.
Yeah, I believe he
out for this.
Basically has every cover, not counting like Virgin or Shadow variants for like Mike Mayhew stuff, but like pretty much at least like one version of about every cover of the first arc entirely. So, yeah.
Yes.
Bravo!
Shout out to those to the rest of you all in the the comics channel. We always like to brag. We always like to show off what covers we have, and it's always fun to see what everybody has collected. This, of course, occurs 232 years BBY and is technically phase 1 of the High Republic. So I am going to go around the room and have everybody give their initial ratings and a little explanation why. And I'm going to actually start with Caleb this time. So Caleb, what is your initial impression of this arc?
Initial impression. It's a good impression. I think it's probably sitting around like an 8.9 or 8.5 to a 9. It's the one like issue that I've like read most. I feel like I've read it like 5 times now, just like from all these like first 6 issues. So yeah, I think I'll stick to my guns. I'll say an 8.5. It's really, really good. A really like high watermark. There's a few dangling threads here, but it's still very good.
Okay. 8.5 to start off. It's a very nice score to start off with. Jacob, I'm going to come to you. What score are you going to give this?
I think I'm going to give it an 8. Not because it's not good. It's very hard to judge a comic book, especially one that's designed to be a longer run, this early on. Like if I asked you to like read the first 5 chapters of, Lost Stars and ask you to rate it, it's gonna be kind of tough. Like it's like, I don't know, like they haven't really done anything yet. Like no one, like they're not in the Empire. They're just like children. So like, yeah, you're looking at a very short snippet of a longer story. I think this arc like really takes off in issue 4 or 5, which is unfortunate because then that's a much shorter span of what we're reviewing today. It's still great, and the stuff that comes after what we're talking about today is absolutely fantastic. But I'm gonna give this one an 8.
Okay, all right. So we've got an 8.5. We've got an 8. Emma, coming to you next. What are you going to give this arc?
Yeah, I think following our tradition, I think I'm probably going to be one of the highest scorers here. I'm going to give this a 9.2.
Wow. Okay.
There's a lot of really interesting lore that I seriously loved, one of which was getting to see like how a Jedi becomes a knight, which I think is like the first time we've actually seen the process in canon, at least one of the first times I can clearly remember. And seeing the Starlight Beacon dedication ceremony, we got some hints to some future characters that would show up in Wave 2. Just really, really great stuff. More Drengir was awesome. They're a scary villain to me because they are so unassuming, and then all of a sudden they can just poke their little tentacles through you, and then that's it. You're done. And that's terrifying. So yeah, I really enjoyed this arc, and I think it helps that we've gotten, what are we up to, like issue 9 or issue 10? Like if you're reading issue to issue,
I kind of know that
now.
Yeah.
Yeah, 9. So it helps to know that the story kind of it does end on a cliffhanger, this arc, and it helps to know that because I'm reading issue to issue, it helps to know that it does resolve itself eventually. And so I really enjoyed it.
Okay, all right. So an 8.5 from Caleb, an 8 from Jacob, a 9.2 from Emma. I am going to be a little unfair to this, and I'm going to give it an 8. And the reason I say I'm being unfair is because in relation to everything else that we've gotten from the High Republic, this doesn't do as much for me as the books do. And that is more a telling of how amazing the rest of the content is than it is a penalty for this for this comic arc. So I love the characters in this book, but the fact that there isn't a lot. I mean, there are some awesome panels, but there's just it's not as world changing as some of the other novels are, and the fact that this is a little bit of an incomplete arc because of the way the issue 6 and 7 kind of go, and the story goes in there. I'm not going to give it as high as you gave it, Emma. So I have a feeling I'm going to be convinced to give it a little bit higher, but just my initial gut reaction of reading it over again, because I have also been reading it issue to issue, is that it's good, but that's good for the High Republic, unfortunately, is a low bar, because everything else in the High Republic has just been outstanding, and that's a little unfair, but I have a feeling you all are going to change my mind and probably have me rate this a little higher in the next 45 minutes. So Emma, we're going to go ahead and start with you, and you're going to go ahead and give us the synopsis for our issue 1.
Yeah, let's do it. So we start off on Shuridan, where Jedi Padawan Keeve Trennis is undergoing her trials of knighthood under her master Skier, even though at the beginning it makes it seem like Skier's attacking her, maybe foreshadowing some things to come, perhaps. Things get interrupted by a swarm of giant insects, like giant insects rampaging across the land. They were really creepy. We switch to Masters Avar Kriss and Astala Maru aboard the fully operational Starlight Beacon. They're just about to open it up and do the dedication ceremony. I think it said they're like 9 hours from the dedication ceremony. So I think this takes place just before the end of the Light of the Jedi, for those of you who really like to know where we are in the timeline. They are met with a surprise visit from Yoda, who appoints Master Kriss to the position of Marshal of the Beacon. Keeve senses that the insects are disturbed by the signal from Starlight Beacon, and she sacrifices her Jedi Vector. She sets it up with the same signal and has it go on autopilot so that it directs the swarm off the planet. Succeeding in her trial, Keeve is promoted to Jedi Knight by Master Chris. She ignites her lightsaber and taps each shoulder, or she doesn't tap each shoulder. That would be bad. But she hovers it over her shoulders. It's really cool. And the Starlight Beacon is brought online with the big dedication ceremony that we see at the end of Light of the Jedi. It's really cool to see that visualized. So that is how the issue ends. Issue 2, Caleb, what do we got?
Yeah, just want to say that was a big issue. That's the first time the first bit of media I got from the High Republic. So that was a real doorbuster of a way into the era, into the franchise. And it was a really, full episode. So, now in issue 2, we can't start the more episodic storytelling. So this one starts with a distress call where Keeve, a skier, no longer Master and Apprentice, but still Master and Apprentice, and Jedi Knights Sarek and Tarek arrive aboard a now derelict ship. On board, there's the signature gas trail and leavings of a Nihil attack. While Skier deals with mental trauma after the events of Light of the Jedi, he finds a dead hut. Meanwhile, Skier himself finds a Nihil survivor who injures his companion Tarek, and in turn, Skier slaughters the Nihil. That's a really fun action sort of beat, where they took its time to really dive a little bit more into Skier himself. They tracked the vessel that was with the dead hut, where it came from a farming colony on Sadir Minor. Sarek wanders into the fields of grain and is attacked by something unseen and unknown. Issue 3.
And because of that, in issue 3, Tarek is suffering very badly because of their
twin sense.
Yes, I was gonna say I didn't know if it was technically if they ever specifically said that it was telekinetic or if it was a little bit deeper than that. But they have a very close bond, and with Sarek suffering and unable to connect with Tarek. Tarek is suffering very badly. Wandering off, Keeve finds a sinkhole that leads deep into a tunnel overrun with vines, and deep inside she finds Sarek, now mentally overwhelmed by the Drengir, a planet hive mind that we have now come to know with the other parts of the High Republic content that we have out now. Back on the ship, Skier is dealing with mounting frustrations. Tarek, also under the influence of the dark side, unleashes a cloud of spores on Skier, causing him to grow a new arm, because remember, he lost that arm in the fight from Light of the Jedi, and kind of take on a completely new personality that we see as we dive into issue 4.
Exactly. Having captured the Jedi, the Drengir, through Skier, begins to monologue. The classic villain move, very, very choice. But this unfortunately backfires, as it always does, and allows Keeve to talk to her master and try to bring him back to the light, both metaphorically and reality. Brings back to the light side of the Force so he can gain control of his body and free the Jedi and everyone else that was trapped underground. Escaping the lair, the Jedi take steps to protect the village that's about to be overwhelmed from the Drengir when an unexpected ship arrives. An entire Hutt battle group full of tame rancors and dangerous battle cannons.
Yeah, so last issue here, issue 5, Mayarga the Hutt, which is very hard to say. She begins to grandstand and demand that the Jedi leave their planet, claims the planet as a Hutt's planet, even though they made a deal for the crops that they grow on that planet, which is a main ingredient of Bacta. So there's clearly a bit of an evil motive there. Skier's evil arm, his Drengir vine arm, it works up and attacks Mayarga the Hutt, and it starts a firefight. However, Master
Chris,
yes, thank you. I was like, Keeve, Chris, yeah. Master Chris convinces Mayarga the Hutt to work together instead of working against each other, which creates for a surprising team up, but it's also very, very badass. During the melee, Keeve corners her former master Skier and manages to direct the Force through the Drengir hive mind, forcing them to run away, even on Starlight, where there's a Drengir that Drengir starts to retreat as well. So they call it the mind touch, and Kiev sort of used Skier, did the mind touch on him, which therefore did it on all of the Drengir, which convinced them that they were spoiled meat. And that is a quote. Skier falls from the toll of the mind touch and having to communicate with all those Drengir. And that is how the issue ends in Kiev's arms.
This is probably my single favorite panel from this entire arc. Is I remember when this came out, and I remember going into the Discord channel and talking about about the way Arya was able to capture the emotion on Kiev's face here. This is a great panel. So
exactly, I love it when when the artist can be like, okay, we're going to have an entire panel about one emotion, and that's all we're doing here.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to stay right there as we dive into our characters. And we'll start with Kiev Trennis, our point of view character that we basically see the galaxy through her eyes. And what makes it exciting to see, what exactly do we feel is this? Why do we think that is this an exciting thing to do? Do we like the fact that this Jedi, newly knighted Jedi is the best person to have as the point of view for this? I'm going to go ahead and start with you, Emma, and say, is that something that you like to? Would you like to see somebody else like Avar? Like, what were your thoughts when it was evident that we were going to have her as the featured character here?
I loved this choice. I think it is so great. I love seeing the galaxy through the eyes of someone who feels unsure of themselves, but still has a lot of responsibility. And I think that's why I love characters like Vernestra Rose so much. She's my favorite Jedi in the High Republic. And I think that's why I'm also drawn to Kiev, is all of a sudden they're thrust into this sort of uncertain galaxy with these threats with the Nihil and the Drengir. But all of a sudden they have way more responsibility than they had before. Vernestra, she became a master. Kiev literally just became a knight on the day that Starlight Beacon was activated. And suddenly there's a lot of pressure. She's on the front lines fighting the Drengir. And I think if we saw it from someone who had more experience and who had kind of a cooler head in some ways, like Master Chris, or maybe even someone like Yoda, they could have picked Yoda to lead it. I think it wouldn't have been as interesting because we get to see the emotions that Kiev goes through. I don't think that it would be, I think that it would be hard to display a relationship between someone who has more experience, someone who's older, maybe a master, than the relationship that we see between Kiev and Skier, because she clearly cares about him a lot, because just up until I think a day ago in the timeline of the story, he was her master, and they both have gone through hell in the last few days, story wise, and that causes a lot of emotions to come up. So I think it's also going to be interesting, I think, to see how all of this affects Kiev, like seeing her master go dark, her master, attacking her and things like that. How is that going to affect her in the future? How's that going to affect her mindset in the future? Seeing all of this death, as well as sort of just untrust between citizens, like normal regular citizens, and the Jedi, because she's seeing all of this firsthand, and all of a sudden, she has so much more authority than she did before. So I'm very glad that we're seeing it through Kiev's eyes. I'm so glad that she is the main character, and I think it was a great choice overall.
Yeah, you bring a really good point about the added drama that brings this new threat, the Drengir, to light with her being a brand new knight. So, Jacob, I'm going to ask you, even if the Drengir weren't in this picture, do you think that Kiev is ready for the responsibility that knighthood comes, and how does the Drengir kind of affect whether or not she is ready? Because she kind of has to, whether she is ready or not.
Right. Yeah. No, I did. It's hard to see since we don't really know the key. We know very little of the Keeve before she basically is knighted. We have like one flashback in I think issue 4 or 5. But I definitely think she is. She despite her potty mouth as the chat is currently discussing, she's definitely capable. She has some incredible like force capabilities with like the ability to like she had the ability to like mind meld with like the insect swarm, and like you can see, like, not to spoil things, but you'll see some more things along that line later in the comic book run, and I think she's incredibly capable. And I think you mentioned the Drain Gear threat specifically. We're seeing her ability to adapt to something that's completely unexpected and like completely. It's probably one of the largest threats that a Jedi has faced in hundreds of years, not counting the Nihil, obviously. So like the fact that she's able to adapt and survive in that, I think is just proof of the fact that this is definitely something she was ready for. And the fact that she had such a skilled and confident master as Skier, I think that only goes to show that this is a role, a burden that she was ready to take on.
Okay, like I really do like Keeve a lot. I like, this might sound a little pretentious, but I'm glad we don't have another Padawan like adventure. Like I feel like we've gotten our feel of seeing like the Padawans learning and all like that. And like it's to kind of put a little bit of a spin on it, it's kind of like she just graduated college and now she's in the workplace and she's like, oh, this isn't as fun as I thought it would be. She's been doing a lot of it as a Padawan, but now she has a lot more responsibilities and a lot more actions. Like in the next couple issues, we see her like having to deal with the fact that she can now be like ordered around directly to do things by herself and have to fly solo, literally. So there's a lot of like angst and like unsureness that comes with that, and they have definitely explored a lot in the next volume. So if you really like Keeve, you should definitely read the next couple issues. We dive into issue 6 and 7. They definitely dive a lot more into her there. I'm excited to see where she's going. Like as Tyler said, there's, if anything's holding back this series, it's that we just don't know exactly where this is going to lead. So we're not getting the payoff to some of these early character movements yet. That might come in several years, but I'm excited for the next several years of Keeve content. So no, she's a really like fun and almost like a fresh way of taking onto the look of the galaxy here.
Caleb, I want to come to you with this next question because you're our resident Trandoshan fan. How do you like seeing, like, we've never seen Trandoshans like this. Not only is Skier a good guy, but he's a master. And how do you like seeing just this different situation?
Exactly.
I really can't use any other words other than that. It's just it's so unique to have a Trandoshan in this role. And everything that we see with his character.
For lack of a more appropriate term, like Trandoshans are very like, with almost the exceptions only coming out this year, are bad guys. Like
right.
Like Bosk the bounty hunter is like like even more than other bounty hunters, he is definitively evil. He really wants to hurt Wookiees. Like
right.
We've got a few like I feel like
Clone Wars has kind of laid the foundation that Trandoshans as a whole are bad because they pretty much they want to eradicate Wookiees off of the face of
they love hunting and they love attacking. Well, I take that back. We've gotten a few, like if you've read the Dr. Aphra series, there's a really nice win-loss in her
win-loss and knock.
Knock, yeah, knock is a wonderful sort of Trandoshan because they can't flip it upside down. And then we've gotten Sid from the Bad Batch.
Yes, that's true.
Yes, I love Sid.
So like I feel like there's a kindred soul of mine out there at Disney right now trying to right the wrongs of like of saying all the Trandoshans are evil. So like seeing Skier as a Jedi master, that's really refreshing. But there's that great scene in issue 2 where we don't quite know it yet, but we know he's losing his connection to the Force. So he's like, he just saw his friend got shot. He's in the middle of a poison glass. He literally just takes his mask off and like, okay, I'm going to hunt you like the beast you are.
Yes.
And just like absolutely annihilates, as the panel we have here, like just like it's I don't think I've seen violence like this described with a lightsaber in a long time. He is bisecting that Nihil. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. He then loses his cool and kind of goes off on a rampage after that. So like it's there's definitely like they're talking about in like that his heritage there, like he's a Trandoshan. He's of course he's evil. And in the later on in the arc when we get the Hutt showing up, she does nothing but smack talk him the entire time, and it's like so frustrating because he's not acting at his best. So you like we want to like hate this Hutt here because she does nothing but talk down to and demean and be racist to Skier, and it's sad.
Yeah. I mean, it's a really interesting dichotomy to see, especially in that scene that you're talking about, the aggression, the natural aggression of a Trandoshan on the hunt, butted up against
there is no emotion,
tranquility. Yes, the tranquility and the lack, like you said, the lack of emotion of the Jedi, and that was one of the coolest parts of this entire arc. But Caleb, you've got a couple of other discussion points that you wanted to talk about for this character.
And yeah, and as I mentioned, we are seeing like as we see Keeve kind of gain power and get better and better at the Force, we're seeing Skier like drop down and become more and more out of touch with his training, with his upbringing, with his like role as a Jedi Master. So like it's not common to see like Jedi lose connection with the Force. You can like see bits and pieces of it here in like far out media. Like I'm reading the Darth Bane trilogy. There's a part in the first book where he kind of lost connection with the Force. In KOTOR, they kind of severed Revan from the Force and kind of depowered him down. Like there's a couple of points from that. So it's not something that seems to happen that often, but this is definitely like a kind of like he's losing his connection to the Force, and he's very ashamed of that. Like that is kind of an interesting sort of thing. Like, is there not, just like what I have a couple of bullet points later on for the big discussion questions here, but like he is not well, and it feels like he doesn't have he can't go to his friends and to his bosses and say like, hey, I'm losing my connection with the Force, because that's his identity as a Jedi. So he feels like he's losing like his core component of who he is I'm a Jedi, I'm in touch with the living Force, I'm in control of my life. And yet he sees, as he looks back in just like the last like 8 hours of his life, I've also murdered a person in cold blood, by chopped up his body because I was mad, and then poisoned all my friends and captured them because I thought I was powerful enough to tackle a hive mind of plants. So a little bit of Jedi hubris there, probably, but yeah, he's definitely he's definitely an interesting Jedi. He's not like, I'm glad they're not doing the whole he's a Jedi and then he fell and then he's a fallen person and he's now a dark side user. There's definitely a lot more struggle and gray area here that I'm glad they're digging into.
Yeah, I found the whole thing with Skier feeling ashamed about it. Excuse me, kind of, I don't know if I'm on the right track here, but I found it like a kind of interesting metaphor for how we look at mental health in our society. Okay. Like it's kind of something that a lot of people feel ashamed to talk about when you're kind of like losing your way and things like that. I don't know why that came to my mind. It just felt like a commentary on how things are today. But
absolutely.
Yeah. Another thing that I'm kind of thinking with Skier is he might be ashamed because he's a Trandoshan and people expect him to be violent and people expect him not to be a Jedi. So I wonder if he's just like white knuckling, just holding on to the light, even if there is something wrong with him. And maybe that's why he's, nervous to tell someone. But I did like what Avar said. I think she said it to Keeve that, whatever the Drengir did to him or whatever's going on with him, we will bring him back. She's not just giving up on him. And she's not just saying, well, that's it, nothing we can do, he's lost. And I really like that about Avar. She's a very hopeful person that won't just give up because it's hard. And even though we didn't get that much Avar in this this arc, that was a really, really solid moment. Might be one of my favorites, with the whole discussion around the Force and Skier's connection to the Force, and what they're going to do about it as an organization.
I really enjoy, the biggest overarching question from the High Republic era is, how do we get from here to the prequel? And I love the breadcrumbs of all of these masters having issues, having personal issues, having issues with the Force, the Jedi Council having and they're all, your discussion on how it kind of mirrors, how we see mental health. It really kind of overlaps for all of these issues. And I'm not just talking about Skier, but if we talk about some of the, events of the novels, everybody is having their own sort of identity crisis and nobody wants to talk about it. Everybody, I know, without any factual evidence, but just by the confidence I have in these writers, that's got to pay off. And I'm really interested to see how each of these little issues and each of these personal issues are going to come back and not only hurt's too strong of a word, but hurt both the individuals that are facing them and the Jedi Council as a whole. Because is that what it's going to be? Is that what is going to be the fall of this golden era? Is because their pride, their inability to trust, in their emotions, which is ironic, being Jedi, their inability to communicate with each other and to really share these emotions with everybody. Like that's, and seeing a Trandoshan, like I said, who is, I really hope that we see a little bit more of, maybe he's losing the connection with his Force because with the Force, because it's his natural, he's fighting his natural instinct, of as a Trandoshan, to be aggressive and to be, and just, it's such an exhausting, battle in his psyche that, it's causing, his subconscious to be distracted or something, like I'm spitballing, literal, but it's just, it's so interesting that there seems to be a common thread that all of these masters, all of these people that are supposed to be role models for this entire order, seem to be having their own personal issues with the Force, on top of their inability to talk about it with everybody. And I just find it fascinating.
Exactly. Almost, I think it will go the opposite way, because like the Jedi we see in the prequel era, like, during the time of Qui-Gon Jinn, Ki-Adi-Mundi, Adigalia, like these are Jedi who are very, very, to use for lack of a better term, orthodox. Like they are all wearing the same drab robes. I feel like that this is just like what I think creatively they might be going for. I feel like we're heading for a time where there's going to be a lot of emotion and like, sympathy and outpouring that we see. And we saw a lot of this in Live to Jedi, of like, Jedi, like, connections between Jedi are not frowned upon, but it's cool if we buddy up and like we can have relations within the Jedi Council. That's fine. I feel like that's going to lead to some sort of downfall, that there's going to be a course correction, so that by the time we get to the prequel era, they'll have course corrected too far, too hard, to be
cookie cutter.
Absolutely no relationships, absolutely no love. Like we are not engaging in any form of emotion at all, because that led us to a bad path right here. So we need to, that led us out of the High Republic era. So we need to course correct so hard and cookie cutter it out, so that no one can be emotional in the Jedi. So I feel like that's might be where they're going. I'm not sure yet.
Let's talk about Avar for a little bit. She's the superhero. She's the cavalry. She's the guiding light. She is in this so we can see how Jedi, for lack of a better term, should handle situations. But Jacob, did she misstep anywhere? And I'm actually going to lead you to where exactly, her relationships with the Hutts. Is that a good thing? Is that something that is Jedi-like? What are your thoughts on how she's handled everything so far?
So I'm going to say, probably not what you expect. I'm going to say it is Jedi-like. Maybe not for the best reasons. I think oftentimes in Jedi, it's especially in the High Republic era, there's like a certain naivete about how the world works and how they always try. They're searching for the best in someone. They will try and avoid the loss of life at all times, even if it's the Batman conundrum. I'm not gonna kill the Joker because I'm not gonna do that. But then the Joker kills so many people. Like they are trying to find the light in every situation, which I think leads them to in this situation being like, okay, well, we can come together. The Hutts, they've done bad things, but we can inspire them. We can come together with them and do something good for the galaxy by holding off the Drengir. So I would, although it's maybe not a conventional answer, I would say yes, in that way it is very Jedi-like. Not because it's maybe the right thing to do, but it's because what a Jedi thinks is the right thing to do.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I think that there has to be like a calculation that takes place. And I know, that doesn't seem very Jedi-like either. I mean, their entire purpose is to, not kill anyone if they don't have to. But I think there comes a point where something becomes such a scourge on the galaxy that you have to say, okay, should I kill, such and such number of people, or let such and such number of people be killed? How could a Jedi justify allowing people to be killed when they could do something about it? I think that that's kind of like the moral issue there. And I think it's likely that each Jedi will have a different reasoning on it and a different stance that they take in terms of the issue. But I think overall, like, the goal of the Jedi is to protect as many people as possible, even if that means having to harm or maybe even kill the people that are doing the harming, even though that they don't advertise that that's what they want to do. They don't say that killing is our goal, but sometimes sometimes there comes a point where the number of people that you're quote unquote allowing to be killed outweighs the sort of moral obligation to not do any of the killing, which is obviously a hard choice and not one that anyone should have to make, because of course, even though the Drengir aren't like a human or like our typical alien, something that can communicate in the typical fashion. I think one of the key things visually that we see is that the Drengir text bubbles are all in black, and I found that very interesting because recently in the Darth Vader comics, his text bubbles, Darth Vader's text bubbles have been black, and so I just kind of found that connection interesting. Like, there was also a panel, like a flashback panel when Skier, speaking as the Drengir, was describing like the history of the Drengir, and there was like some Sith, and I found that very interesting. Like, are the Drengir some sort of a Sith entity, and therefore do the Jedi have the obligation? There it is. Jacob pulled it up. Thank you. Do the Jedi therefore have the obligation to defeat them or find a way to subdue them because they have had a past with the Sith? And I don't know. I think that the question, there is no right answer, and obviously killing is usually never the answer for the Jedi, but it might have to be here. And for Avar to say, yeah, let's team up with the Hutts, I think that says a lot about what she thinks about the situation.
I do want to spend some time talking about Sarah and Tarek as well. I do want to call out the fact that they are trans, non-binary, and that is something. They were on the cover of one of their issues for Pride Month, and they're pairing. They have a very, I alluded to it, earlier, during the synopsis. Their pairing seems a little bit different than what we've seen before. They seem to be able to transpose items. Tarek had Drengir spores despite not stepping off the ship. Caleb, how do you what were your thoughts on these two characters and their portrayal in this book and their their role, that they've played in this story.
Like they have a very interesting sort of a role here. I'm glad that we have them. They're definitely a very unique take on Jedi, and not to bury the lead too much, but I feel like this plays into some of the greater themes of this story about like hive mind connectivity, being one as a unit, but also being separate entities, because like they are definitely separate entities and they can split up and do other things, but they are, when one gets injured, the other one is almost equally incapacitated. So that's not really a strength at that point. That's almost like a weakness there. We've seen some like force pairings before. I've written down like Kreia and the Exile from KOTOR 2, most famously Rey and Din from the sequel trilogy. So we've seen these kind of like force diodes, force pairings before, but definitely not in something that's as healthy a relationship as it is this time around. So there's definitely like it's definitely encouraging to see something very powerful and very positive come out of their connection, not only with each other but through the force. And they're not isolating themselves out. They're very friendly when they're around our people. They're doing their best not to seem kind of weird and for lack of a better term, creepy, because you don't know which one you're talking to unless you're paying really close attention, that sort of thing. So like they got some really good sort of things. And Emma, you're the only one here who has a twin. Are these powers like realistic? Do you have these sort of twin sis powers?
Oh, 100%. My sister and I call it twin telepathy, and yeah, I know what she's thinking right now. We're not even in the same state, but I know what she's thinking. No, I'm just messing with you. Like, yeah, I found that very interesting. I have a few thoughts on them. First of all, the first thing that came to mind when the whole Drengir thing happened was dyad. Like, it reminded me so much of the Rise of Skywalker that whatever happened to one person could happen to the other. We saw the lightsaber sort of the passing of the lightsaber, which sort of brought their two spaces together, even though they weren't really in the same space, which reminded me of like, okay, Sarah and Tarek aren't in the same space, yet they both have Drengir injuries. Only one of them was in contact with the Drengir, so that very much reminded me of the of a dyad, and I wonder if there is something there. And the other thing that sort of came to mind was like the sort of sibling connections that we've seen in Star Wars. Empire, when Luke says, he calls out Leia's name, and Leia knows that he's calling for her and knows where he is through the Force, even though she's had no Force training. And I think, I think that there is like this instinct between siblings in Star Wars. I think siblings in real life too. Like, I know when my sister's thinking something and she's lying to me, you know what I mean? So I think it counts for real life and in Star Wars as well, that there's a very deep connection. And then when you combine that, with force powers, with maybe a dyad, I think it'd be really cool if they were a dyad. I think they make a very interesting pairing. And I'm glad you brought that up, Caleb, that their relationship is very positive, because sometimes with these forced pairings, I mean, Luke and Leia were very positive, of course, but with Rey and Ben, it wasn't always positive. And then some other forced pairings, usually it's like a light and a dark, opposites attract kind of thing.
I think we're going to see something like that, and there's one of the Star Wars visions called the Twins, which I think is definitely going to be pairing off that sibling rivalry.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm glad that they have an interesting relationship, and I'm really excited to learn more about them and see more of them in the future. I think they're two really interesting characters, and they have a lot of potential.
So we mentioned the Drengir as and they're the villain of this story. They're a hive mind. We don't see many hive minds. I think I actually just had to go back into my novels behind me. They very much remind me of the Killik
the Dark Nest
species from the Dark Nest trilogy. Does the fact that they're a hive mind, does that make them an actual threat to the Jedi? And why is it that we've only really seen this hive mind? I believe that's really the only time that I can think of in Legends, and I don't think there's anything else that I know of in canon. So Jacob, why do you think Why do you think we don't see too many hive minds, and does that make them a real threat to the Jedi?
I mean, I don't know. I guess they all got written into Star Trek. There wasn't any room for us to get those.
I mean,
it is.
I'm not. Yeah,
it is Star Trek Day, by the way. Just throwing it out there on the Star Wars podcast. You're welcome, Rick. But no, I don't know. It's definitely makes it for an interesting dynamic because it allows. I mean, you have a villain, you have this presence, but it almost like it's almost lacks a presence in a way, in the fact that like there's no personality behind the drain gear. It's just like it's like a presence. It's a being. It's not like a individual or a character. So it's like, you know, like you have like all the like the classical like types of conflict in literature, like man versus man, man versus society, man versus nature. It's really just more of or person versus nature. Like you're fighting a force of nature rather than a being or an army or anything like that. It's a different, you know, it's a different dynamic. And we see beyond that, we see like how the like nature of having a hive mind can be both positive and negative, because obviously you have a large control over a large span, like all over across the galaxy, like that's centered somewhere. But then you also have the ability of, you know, keep Trinus to force push them and like make them think we're all like spoiled meat. So, you know, it cuts both ways. So it's interesting. Like I think it's something that I guess Genos and Hive Mind. That's another one.
Not quite. They're like it's close because it's an ant colony, because like, and the queen ant sends out like kind of orders to like their lower drones, but I don't think it's quite as, but there are multiple ants, so the entire thing is in a whole hive mind.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyways, but yeah, I think it would be a concept that'd be very easy to be overused. So I'm glad it's used a little bit more sparingly here.
Exactly. And you joke about the Star Trek sort of thing, but like having a hive mind and like the idea of like who is what being and consciousness and that sort of thing, those are Star Trek questions. You know, that's the sort of thing that Star Trek is out to answer and have fun, you know, exploring, is like where does an individual write versus like the collective society. That's a Star Trek question. You know, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, says Mr. Spock. The needs of the many, yes, outweigh the wants of the few, as Mr. Spock said right before his passing. So that's the sort of thing that Star Trek's answered. Star Wars is about space wizards and laser swords,
right?
And you know, like we can have really fun and exciting and stimulating sort of things, but you know, for the hive mind of the Dringar, they're definitely here to be a threat to the Jedi. I think, you know, having like a unstoppable force of shrubbery is kind of cool. Like there's a very epic scene where you know, Avar like jumps down and like bursts through this thing and slices the Dringar in half, and it's really dramatic, and then immediately the two halves just reform, like, yeah, that didn't do anything, try again.
So I've got a little bit of a hot take on the Drangir. I'm underwhelmed, like just in general, like, you know, and I full disclosure, I've read everything that the High Republic has put out, and there's a lot of threat, but every time that they have been used as a force of evil or you know, as a counterbalance to the Jedi, they've been able to be overcome pretty easily. And you know, maybe it's a calm before the storm, maybe it's you know, they're going to evolve, but I you know, when I see the battles against the Nihil, and unfortunately the Nihil aren't really featured much in this comic. We get the Drangir, and that's pretty much the Drangir, and I would almost argue more so as we've gotten into these later books, the Jedi themselves, you know, they're kind of almost their own enemy. I'm not, I see the Drangir and they look amazing. You know, the art that we see in this book, they look cool, but that's I don't see them as a threat to the Jedi. They've been able to be overcome pretty easily by some pretty, I don't want to say lackluster, but you know, we've got the heavy hitters. We've got Avar, we've got Stellan, we've got, you know, Elzar Mann, we've got Skier, we've got some heavy cleanup hitters for the Jedi. And every single time that the Drangir have been taken out, they've been taken out by by either Padawans or by young knights or somebody that we haven't needed the cavalry to come. They overwhelm, but once the overwhelmingness has been kind of taken care of, they seem to not really be that big of a threat. Like I said, I don't know if that's a hot take, but
yeah,
it
makes a lot of sense. Like, when the first like big book here, we were introduced to Nihil, and like within the first act, they've already killed like dozens of Jedi. Like the Nihil like have like indirectly or directly killed off many named Jedi, and I don't think the Dringer have killed off any Jedi. They've killed like civilians, they've killed a few like minor characters, but they haven't killed Jedi yet. So I don't think it's unreasonable to say that they have not had a massive impact yet.
I think we're kind of led to believe that they're not as big of a threat, and
I hope so. Yes.
I think I don't want to say any specifics in case people haven't read it yet, but Race to the Crash Point Tower changed my mind on the Drengir, and because I was of the same mind as you, Tyler, that that they really aren't as big of a threat. They're manageable, and then they did something in Race to Crash Point Tower that made me kind of change my mind. And I won't spoil it just in case. And then the other thing is I kind of wonder if when they were planning out the High Republic and the stories, the Nihil are the clear villains here. However, it might get kind of boring if they were the only villains. I wonder if maybe the Drengir were brought in as a kind of MacGuffin to make us think, like, because when we got the concept art like early on, we were like, oh my God, evil plants, like, these guys are going to be like, one of the main villains, and then they kind of are, kind of aren't. And so I think maybe we're kind of led on to believe that they, are supposed to be a bigger threat than they are, to sort of distract us from what the Nihil are doing. So I think it could go both ways, but read Race to Crash Point Tower if you haven't, because there's some interesting Drengir stuff in there for sure.
Would we consider the Drengir sentient, or would we be more semi-sentient?
They are 100% sentient. They have the ability to communicate, and they can talk. I've watched enough Star Trek. I'm an expert on sentience, guys.
I feel that their motives are very simple, and there's not really, other than feeding, there's not a lot of wants or desires. There's no and that's what I mean in the sense of sentient versus semi-sentient, is that what is their plan, like, other than eating? What they're kind of zombie-like in that instance of they're on a one-track mind. They want to eat. They see meat. They only want good meat. They don't want spoiled meat. But what is their goal? To eat everything in the galaxy? I don't know. I want to believe you, Emma, in that this is not the final form of the Drengir, and that there's gonna be something else. We're made to feel this way for a reason, and then something's going to happen, and it's like, oh, that's why they're a threat. That's Drengir that we've been waiting for.
Yeah, like I definitely feel like we're sort of building up to, in the very end stages of the High Republic, when we get this big epic, like battle at the end, or whatever happens at the very end of this entire initiative, there's going to have to be some crazy threats. And I kind of have a theory going that we're going to get like this Avengers level threat of like the Nihil, the Drengir, whatever baddies we get in the future. Like, they're all going to team up and work against the Jedi. That's just my theory. I think that we're sort of like building up these other villainous groups for literally all of the cards to be stacked against the Jedi at some point in the end. And I hope that happens, because I think it'd be cool to see like all the baddies sort of gang up on the Jedi, because I don't think that they could handle more than one of these groups at a time. They can barely handle the Nihil as it is.
I just had an image of the Dringer actually joining the Nihil, so each one of them with like leather jackets and helmets.
Bunch of tiny gas masks over their little openings. Yeah.
Be Nasty in the chat does have a good comment. He says, that's what I like about this villain. There is no reasoning with this villain, and he's right. There is no because all they want to do is eat.
Didn't they reason with them? Isn't that a thing? Like in Wave 2 in a story, I'm pretty sure
they like
Yes,
mind controlled them somewhat and sort of thing. I think
there was it was Race to Crash Point Tower again.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, there is
where they were sort of doing some reasoning, and I can't remember if that was Force influenced as well, but yeah, just there's a lot of good stuff in Race to Crash Point Tower if you like the Drengir.
But I do think I'll defend B Nasty's point here for a bit, because there is a little bit of influence in Race to Crash Point Tower, but all they did was point them in a different direction. Like their goal in Race to Crash Point Tower was something. And again, I'm trying to not spoil it. And all that happened is they said, well, you still want that. It's over there. It's not over here. So there's a little bit of mind control, but I still would say that there still isn't any reasoning, because it's not like they said, well, you don't want to eat. There was just what you want is not where you think it is. So,
yeah.
All right.
And I mean, yeah, I think moral of the story is that this whole initiative is so well planned that they can't just be here for just this.
Yes.
And I think we have a lot to look forward to from the Dream.
Yeah, they're not cannon fodder to level up our characters on.
Right.
All right, Caleb, you've got a couple of overarching questions that you want to talk about. So
some of these we've already kind of touched on a lot. One thing we mentioned was that Skier was under a lot of mental pressures, like some major stresses, and was starting to lose his connection to this force. Like, as I mentioned, we don't see this very often, but it's not completely unheard of. Like, do you think the Jedi do or should have like a retirement plan? Like, for most Jedi, it seems like the retirement plan essentially is to be around long enough to become the Jedi Master, beyond a High Master, beyond a Council, and that's it. But like, as we've seen, like with Ty, and there's like certain in the High Republic itself, like there's certain Jedi that just can't fall out of the order, and sometimes it's because they disobey orders, sometimes they don't play nicely, but surely some of the people lose the Force. Do you think the Jedi need a better like out package, like retirement sort of plan here, for like a better term?
I mean, like, we've had so many instances in the High Republic of Jedi sort of following the Force wherever it takes them, like with the Jedi Wayseekers. I think I got it right the first time. Here we go. And then we've got Yoda at the beginning saying that the Force is taking him on a different path from the Council, and he is working with the the Padawans on that other ship, in Daniel Jose Older's The High Republic Adventures. So it seems like there's more leeway in terms of kind of what the Jedi are allowed to do and how they're allowed to go about their lives. However, I mean, they are pretty overworked. The only reason that Yoda retired, quote unquote retired, was because because of Order 66. I think if Order 66 didn't happen, he just would have worked till he died. Like, that's just that's just the kind of person that Yoda was. And I think the Jedi do see a lot, especially with their like humanitarian work. Kind of reminds me of some of the stressors that like first responders go through in their lives. They see a lot of traumatic things, and I think that does take a toll on the Jedi. And of course, I mean, it would depend on the species life cycles and their lifespans. I mean, and things like that. But I think in the High Republic era, at least, it seems that there's more freedom to sort of follow whatever the Force is telling you to do. And I think that might even be better than disconnecting altogether, is to sort of do what you feel is right instead of just forgetting it altogether.
I think they sort of have I guess by the time of the prequel trilogy, they sort of have a retirement plan, because you could kind of say Jocasta Nu is retired because she's a librarian. Like, but I think that I would like to see more emphasis and stories on that, in the sense of, at some point, peacekeeper, warrior, two sides of the same coin. At some point, you can't do that anymore. So what else? That's the part of your question that I am intrigued about, is what do you do when you don't want to be the warrior peacekeeper anymore?
you go to that planet that Biggs and Porkins and Wedge went to when played volleyball.
That resort.
I don't
planet,
know
oh
if you could spend more than a few days on that planet. That
they
would be
spent 2
weird.
weeks there. 2 weeks.
So yeah, so that's something that I'd like to see a transition of away from warrior peacekeeper into not even just teacher, because yes, Yoda is a teacher and teaches but he's teaching the Padawans how to be warriors and slash peacekeepers. I want to see how Jocasta Nu becomes the librarian and how the more the order functions from a organization that is deeper than just keeping peace along the galaxy. That's where when you ask that question, that's kind of where my mind went. Well, I do want to see that.
I certainly got a realization from Light of the Jedi. We actually cast saw something like that. The Blade of Portada. What was his name?
Porter Engle.
Porter Engle, like that's his retirement. Is like, I'm going to be cooking for this tiny little Jedi outpost out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah,
I guess that's your retirement plan, is perfecting soup recipes.
and being the cavalry when
exactly.
But see, yeah, but he's still the cavalry though. That's the interesting part. I can't see Jocasta Nu when the stuff hits the fan on Coruscant and Anakin is storming the gates. I can't imagine Jocasta Nu is. I mean, well, granted, in the Darth Vader comic, she is able to put up a fight. So maybe I should eat my own words there. So, Kayla, what's your next?
I was about to say, the one thing we learned from all this is there's a lot of exceptions out there. We have a lot of preconceived, but there's a lot of like little things out here that we always forget about. So what's the next one I have? Okay, so the Dringar, as we've established, are a hive mind, but we also, especially with Avar Kriss, her power is to connect everyone together to be on the same page. Like, there's a lot of parallels here between the Dringar, who are using like the dark side almost to like control and manipulate thousands of forces, but the Jedi are on a different like scale here of like being like connecting there. What do we think of the parallels between the Dringar and the Jedi?
I mean, for me, it goes back to I don't think there are a lot of parallels because of the fact that I don't see a lot of depth in the Drangir right now, and that it's hard for me to I see a ton of parallels between the Nihil and the Jedi, but for me, I don't see a lot of parallels because we're still in phase 1 of the Drangir's evolving, and I just don't see a lot of depth behind. They're hungry all the time and they want to consume everything. So
yeah. If I might make a counter argument to that, we do see the Dringar like go out of their way to corrupt and influence certain people to their way of viewing. Like they corrupt Sarek and Tarek, they corrupt Skier, and like have them acting as agents of their own. So they're almost they can recruit people to their side and to their forces, and that's kind of what Avar Kriss did. Is she recruited the Hutts to her side into their forces to fight this war here. So I think it's a little more depth there of like the Dringar definitely are capable of long-term planning and like manipulation and grandstanding. So they have an ego to themselves. They want other things to be part of them, whether as food in their digestive tract or as like soldiers out there. Like minor spoiler for like one of the later episode issues, but they like corrupt a local group of like ants essentially to fight for their side in a later issue. So like they are capable of taking other people and recruiting them into their hive mind here. And this is me playing like extreme devil's advocate, but isn't that kind of what the Jedi are doing? Is that they're gathering force sensitive to add to the harmony of the living force?
Yeah,
that's fair point.
I can see both
sides.
I mean,
I'm about to say, I'm not necessarily saying that the Dringar and the Jedi and the Jedi are the same and there's no difference. I'm just saying it's an interesting parallel.
Yeah, it is an interesting parallel. I think that I definitely think that it's done on purpose. It's done. I think a lot of the purpose of the High Republic in general is to make us think about that the Jedi maybe were once, pure of motive and became sort of corrupt down the line. So I think that there is definitely a reason why we see a little bit of a parallel here.
Exactly. So that was just one of the points. Like the last one I can't have here, and it's one thing that really stuck out when I was reading the Light of Jedi, is the Jedi are definitely coded as, definitely more so than any other era, superheroes. Like, does anyone else kind of gain this vibe as like they show up out of blue with their shiny outfits and cool powers, they save the day, protect civilians and all like that? Is that, am I reading too deeply into it just because it's a comic, or is this something that is definitely, you think they're making purposeful steps to try to make them appear as cape wielding superheroes and with their with their Hall of Justice floating around in space?
I mean, I think it's definitely done on purpose. I mean, I think when it was just the original trilogy and they talked about Jedi of the Old Republic, we kind of like pictured these kind of superhero like figures that were infallible, and I think the one panel that comes to mind in this arc for me when I think about the description of superhero is when Avar comes down and she like slices the Drengir in half. And it was so badass. It was so cool, but like it doesn't seem like a super Jedi thing to do, but it was awesome. So and obviously you can't kill the Drengir that way. I don't think she knows that yet, but we know that from other books. I think that the superhero type of look is definitely on purpose, and even just with the outfits, like in the High Republic, sort of the more gold, a tiny bit more color, with the sashes around their waists, compared to like in the prequel trilogy in the Clone Wars, when we've got some more tans and beiges and some armor. There's definitely some stark differences in the tones, and I think that we're supposed to see them sort of go through this transition between the High Republic and the prequel trilogy, where there is a downfall, and sometimes superheroes, sometimes they do fall. And I think that that's the case. That's obviously going to be the case at some point down the line here.
Yeah. Anyone else want to add on to that superhero thing?
Yeah, I think that there's definitely, it all plays together in the sense of why they're eventually going to fall. Is that they've been put up on that pedestal as superheroes, and I think kind of, I'm trying to think of a comparison that we've seen, kind of in what. No, I don't want to say that. In that I think that the galaxy has become over reliant on them. If there's a problem, the Jedi will come and save us, and there's going to come a time when they're not, or when they do and they fail. And I think that what we're going to eventually see is either the regular ordinary people are going to have to defend themselves, or the Jedi are going to let them down. And either way, it's going to be a sense of, we don't need you anymore. We put our reliance on you for so long, and you failed us, so get lost. And I think that's is going to be where it kind of, why their numbers might shrink to the level that they are come the prequel trilogy. So, thanks. But I think you're spot on in that, yes, they are meant to feel as if they're superheroes in this era.
Exactly. And one of this is again reading Cap deeply into it. One of the reasons that in the why Palpatine took over and managed to crush the Jedi is because he created a war that intertwined the Jedi with the Republic so heavily that it was easy for them to fall together. Meanwhile, like and we're seeing this here where the Republic and the Jedi are intertwined. It's a pretty healthy relationship from like the outside, from the bits we've seen. But there is, when you are tying your thousands of year old monastic tradition to a political candidate, things can get out of whack pretty quickly. So we'll probably see something go wrong there. So Yeah, that's kind of the high-end theory crafting that we have going on here. Speaking of high-end theory crafting and deep dives, Jacob, you burnt the midnight oil on this time once again for all the Easter eggs.
I did. We got some solid Legends connections here. But yeah, here we go. And for reference, I like, if there's something that's like, hey, it referenced Light of the Jedi, I didn't do it because I figure you guys kind of all know those. But anyways, here we go. The Zimpi, which are the little fairy creatures in issue 1. We also talked about them in the Lando Roundtable. They're like Papa Torn's buddies, and they appear here again. At Keeve's Trials, Skier hangs a Tythonian pendant at the top of the Needles. Tython is one of the oldest locations of importance for the Jedi Order in canon, and we see it in Mando Season 2. Keeve references walking to a wasp worm hive, which are creatures we see on Vrogus Voss and Vader Down that Han and Dr. Aphra shoot on top of each other. Here's a deep pull. We got Sarah or Tarek. One of them mentions Nagnal gas as part of the Nihil smokescreen. Nagnal gas was first mentioned in Star Wars Tales number 8 from 2001, but was also mentioned in KOTOR 2 on Narshada.
What was that the bar where you had to learn like the force trans sort of thing to get in there?
I don't know. Ask Wikipedia. Maru discusses the form of barley Ratixia, which was originally cultivated on Thyfera. And Thyfera has some deep Legends ties. It was first mentioned in X-Wing Rogue Squadron, but first fully appeared in X-Wing Bacta War. Pretty apt for a plant used to make Bacta. The other 2 ingredients of Bacta that were mentioned, Alazi and Kavam, were also from the X-Wing series of books. Sedri Minor occupies the same system as Sedri, a mostly water planet that Avar and Maru discuss. Sedri was first mentioned in the Battle of the Golden Sun West End game source book from 1988. The Rhodian family on Sedri Minor offers Keeve a Samana spiced loaf. Samana is a city on Rhodia, their home planet, although it's only ever been mentioned in the wait for it, here it is, the Shadows of the Empire planet guide. So even in the High Republic, our good old boy, oh god, Shizor manages to make his presence known,
his stank known.
Yeah, no, we're good. Keeve later complains about the smell of Skier's Karkin stew. Karkin Rabin is a meat dish first mentioned in Spectre of the Past. It was one of Luke's favorites, and that dish also had Trandoshan origins. And the last one I found was the flashback mission with Gear and Keeve was on Karima, and that planet was first mentioned in the Twin Stars of Kira Weston's source book from 1993. I think that's the second time we've mentioned the Twin Stars of Kira as a Easter egg. I'm assuming the other one was also a Cavan Scott work, but I can't remember what we've done a Roundtable on at this point. But yeah, that is your Easter eggs.
Nice work. Yeah, Cavan, he always has some really deep pulls for sure. And I always love seeing what he comes up with.
I'd love to see that man's library. He must like have every like every one of those D6 like West End Adventures. And whenever he needs, instead of going to like a name generator, he just goes to like one of those books and pulls out a random page.
Right.
For the name.
It probably rivals Trev's library.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and go back and re-rate this book. I'm going to go in the same order that I did at the top of the show. And so I'm going to start with Caleb. You originally gave it an 8.5. What, after our long discussion here, what are you going to give it now?
I think I'm going to stick with my guns and give it an 8.5. There's a lot of really good things here. Like I've definitely pulled out a few extra things here that make me appreciate it more. But I think, like if we included the next 2 issues there, it's an easy 9, but because it's kind of not the complete story here, it's still a really good story. I love a great cliffhanger, but I still think it's an 8.5 for me.
All right, so you're standing pat. Jacob, you started off with an 8.
I did.
Staying with an 8?
I think so. Yeah, I still think that just the fact that this doesn't exist in a vacuum, in comparison to the rest of the series and the rest of the High Republic entries, I think as 8 is fair. However, I will give honorable mention to, I'll give the art and like a 9.5. I think the art is fantastic. and it's great to have something such high quality and such consistent quality on this flagship series. So yeah, eight for the story as a whole, but we're gonna give Ario Anandito a special 9.5.
All right, Emma, you're the high mark of the group with the 9.2 originally. How have we affected your score since the top of the show?
I think I'm also going to stay at my score of a 9.2. I still really enjoy the story and some of the deeper themes that we kind of uncovered here, with some parallels going on with some real world things. I thought that was really cool. I really am enjoying the run like as a whole, and I think it helps that, like, we kind of know if you're reading week to week what happens as we go further along. That definitely helps the score for me. I think if I had read this and didn't know what happened in 6, 7, and 8, blah blah blah, I think it might have been lower, because that cliffhanger, it definitely, I mean, that was rough. I remember reading that issue, like when it first came out, I was like, darn it, I have to wait another month to find out what happens. And so yeah, that was pretty tough. But yeah, Cavan Scott always does some good work. And Jacob, I'm glad you mentioned the art, because this was some really, really solid stuff. Keeve's sort of like force sort of vision, or like, whatever that was amazing art. Holding Skier in her arms in the last page, also amazing with the lighting and the colors. It was all just so good. And yeah, have to shout out the art there. So sticking at my 9.2, really enjoyed it.
All right, so we've got an 8.5 from Caleb that stayed at an 8.5. We got an 8.0 from Jacob that stayed at an 8.0. We got a 9.2 from Emma that stayed as 9.2. I can't just leave it as the way the rest of you have. And I also equally cannot lower my score, because that's just not something that there's no reason to do that. So I will bring it up. Normally I only go half points, 8s and 8.5s, but I'm going to bring it up by a quarter point. I'm going to bring it up to an 8.25, mainly because of the art. The art, Be Nasty says in the chat that they made the trade white. Again, like, that's awesome. The detail that Ario is able to do in the faces is amazing. Be Nasty has also caused me to reopen issue 4 and look at that history page of the Drangir. And I love it, like the art of this, in each of the panels, and the fact that all the panels are separated by the roots of the Drangir. Like, I love the art, that the colors are bright. The Jedi are in yellows and golds, and so everything about the art is fantastic. I would even give Ario like a 9.9 when it comes to
exactly
art. And so I will bring my score up to an 8.25. And that is entirely based off of the fact that the art is so fantastic. So
absolutely, like, I think this is like the dream team of like Star Wars content.
100%, absolutely.
Like, I do not know if there's a better pedigree of Star Wars like comic like coalition that we've seen yet. This is some real A-team sort of stuff. Like, even the covers by Phil Noto, the person we did our first artist spotlight, each cover is so good.
Yeah, 100% agree. So, all right, our next roundtable is actually going to be fairly quickly. And that is going to be on September 29th, and that is going to be for the Edge of Balance Volume 1. So we not only are we going to stick with the High Republic, but we're going to get our first manga on this show. So that is something that we should all be excited for. And in addition to that, we also have another special announcement for next week's show that I am actually going to turn over to Emma so that she can make the announcement.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to announce our next big Youtini podcast crossover. It's Shadows of the Empire Part 2. No, I'm just messing with you guys. It's quite the opposite, actually. So if for those that don't remember or weren't around for when we did our first crossover, Cosmic Force and Legends Look Back did a crossover all about Shadows of the Empire, because it's a Legends book and it's got some comics, and we did a crossover on that. This time we are doing one with all 3 of our live shows. all about women in Star Wars. I'm very excited to discuss it. We're going to talk about characters, as well as focusing on creators and how women have sort of evolved in Star Wars. And I'm very, very excited to talk about it. I'm going to be on Living Force on Monday to talk about it in the books. And of course, I'll be here on Wednesday night talking about it in the comics with all of you. And I have to say, so far, the research that I've done for Cosmic Force, I'm just so excited to talk about some of these creators. Some of these women are so amazing. And, we don't talk about creators in general enough. Especially women creators in Star Wars comics. Comics in general, it's a hard sort of medium for women, but I think we're getting better, and I'm really excited to shine a light on it. So that'll be next week. We've got Living Force Monday night, 8 p.m. Eastern. Cosmic Force, same time, same place, Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, as always. And then Legends Look Back, which is going to be Thursday night, I believe, at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. That's the time that they normally go live. It might be different, but I'm pretty sure that that's the time. So make sure to catch all three of those. They're going to be a lot of fun.
Yes, and we're all looking forward to that, to next week. We've got a couple of special guests possibly lined up, and it's going to be a fun show. One last announcement. We are actually having an after show for our Inquisitorious level patrons and up. So those of you that are at that level, we will be over in the Discord voice channel in just a few minutes as soon as we end. So make sure you stop in there and say hi. And for those of you that are wondering what that is, then make sure you join our Patreon, and you can join us next time. But for now, that is going to do it for this week's episode of the Cosmic Force. Don't forget to subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts, and tune in every Wednesday at 8 p.m. right here on YouTube to hear us live. If you like what you hear, please leave a review on iTunes. We definitely always appreciate those. And it also helps people new listeners find the show. So please make sure you do that. And be sure to visit youtini.com for reviews, articles, and news for the entire expanded universe. We also encourage you to join our Youtini Discord community by going to youtini.com/Discord. And if you'd like to support the show, you can find us on patreon.com/Youtini and start receiving exclusive perks starting at just $5 a month. A special thank you to OK Endar, Cheryl Bell, Patrick Ortiz, and Carl Sander on our Jedi High Council, as well as Kyle Hickman, Elizabeth Cloutier, Jason Mitchell, Freddie C., and Sally and Chris Eilerson on our Alliance High Command level for their amazing support. You can tweet the show at Cosmic Force Show or at any of us hosts individually. I'm at Ty Rags. Emma is at Irma Jedi 26. Caleb is at Caleb Lamanik. And Jacob is at Jacob Bosch. Thank you again to Emma, Caleb, and Jacob for hosting with me tonight. A special thank you to all of you who joined us live in the chat today. Thank you to our listeners wherever and whenever you are. And we truly do appreciate your support. We look forward to you joining all of us next week. But until then, remember, we are all the Republic.